Thanks everyone for joining in. My name is Alberto Vieira. I'm the Developer Relations Manager at PureStake, and I'm joined today by Joshy. He's going to be the backup if there's any technical questions regarding Substrate. So today we bring you the session named Making a dApp Multi-Chain, Deploying Solidity Smart Contracts to Moonbeam. So before we dive into the presentation, it's a little bit about ourselves. So I'm Alberto, like I mentioned before. I'm the Developer Relations Manager, and I joined PureStake early June. Before that, I did a PhD in image processing and internal combustion engines, so nothing really related to this. But I've been a fan of blockchain for a long time, and I got the opportunity to start working at PureStake in early June. And with me today, we have Joshy. He's a senior blockchain engineer. He's one of the wizards that we have on the team on the Substrate and Rust side. So he's backing me up in case there's any questions related to that. You can see our GitHub user, Twitter handle, and email on the screen in case you have any questions. Feel free to reach out as always.
Nice to meet you again.
Yep. All right, so with that out of the way, let's talk about the session structure. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what is Moonbeam, right? And I think it's important to have like a context for the presentation. And after showing you and talking about Moonbeam, we're going to do a very short demo to just like get some experience with Moonbeam and show you how it feels to deploy on Moonbeam and use it. Afterwards, we're going to talk about why Moonbeam loves Truffle. So why do we believe that Truffle plays an important role and it's important for the Moonbeam network? And according to that, we just recently launched this week the Moonbeam Truffle box. So I'll show you around how to use it and how you can get it and all that. And we also added a plugin, so it's like an extension of the Moonbeam Truffle box that you can use to expand its functionalities. And we'll explain this later on in the presentation. And lastly, we have a demo time. So it's pretty cool. We're gonna show you around different tools and stuff. We're gonna go through the Moonbeam Truffle box, the plugin, and many other cool things. So I think the first question we have to ask ourselves it's what is Moonbeam, right? And if you're familiar with the Polkadot ecosystem, basically Moonbeam is a smart contract parachain on Polkadot. And if you're not familiar, basically Polkadot has a relay chain, which is like the center of all things, and it has to be light in order to function properly. And the idea is that you cannot run smart contracts on the Polkadot relay chain. And that functionality is actually left to the other blockchains of the ecosystems that are called parachains. So Moonbeam, the most basic definition is that it's a smart contract parachain on the Polkadot ecosystem. But we actually offer deep Ethereum compatibility, right? And we want to be like the easiest entry point for Ethereum projects to the Polkadot ecosystem. And of course, because we're talking about Polkadot, we have to mention cross-chain integration. And this is because Polkadot allows, actually Bruno did a great presentation yesterday when he showed that once you're a parachain in the Polkadot ecosystem, you can communicate with the other parachains, right? So if you're an Ethereum project and you access through Moonbeam to the Polkadot ecosystem, you'll have access through the whole network. And just as a fun side note, the name Moonbeam comes from the jazz standard Polkadots and Moonbeams. So Moonbeam's Ethereum compatibility helps Polkadot, and this is because we provide an easy on-ramp for existing projects and developers because we support Web3 and we have an EVM. So existing projects and devs can start working on Polkadot with minimal effort, right? And one of the reasons behind this is that's because developers can build apps on Polkadot and they can do so with the Ethereum-based development tools and libraries that they know and love already. And one of them being Truffle, right? So they can use MetaMask, Remix, Truffle. And Moonbeam also offers a more complete compatibility features. So it's not that the compatibility extends beyond smart contracts and tools, but also includes the Ethereum standard account format or the signature support or even event subscriptions to, like, for example, contract events, right? And we believe that why is it important, a multi-chain strategy, right? And these are just like 3 points into this discussion that I think has multiple points, right? So the first one is lost market opportunity. And we have been approached by projects saying, hey, we have a simple project that we want to deploy, but there's an issue, right? Let's say we want to roll a dice on chain, and that costs us like $12. economically, it doesn't make sense, right? So the idea is that they're losing market opportunity because it's a project that cannot actually be successfully deployed due to the economic conditions right now. They're in Ethereum's with the high gas fees and all that. Also, if you think about it, you can draw new users and gain access to assets that are not available on Ethereum, right? So we're talking about like DOTS, which is the token of the Polkadot relay chain, or Kusama, which is the token of the Canary network that incentivized testnet of Polkadot, and the growing list of parachains that are joining the Polkadot ecosystem, right? And we also believe that we don't think that there will be one chain to rule them all, right? So it's basically there will be a specialized blockchains like offering specialized features. So there will be a multi-chain world in the future. So how do we bring Ethereum compatibility to a substrate-based chain? And if you think about it, Moonbeam is built on Substrate, and Substrate is based on Rust. So how can you actually use these Ethereum tools on a substrate-based chain? That is the question. And the answer, like the high-level answer that I like to give in this case is the answer is Frontier. And the definition that I like to give the most is the black box definition. Basically, Frontier is a project developed by Parity Technologies, which is the company behind Polkadot. And actually, Pure Stake, which is a team developing Moonbeam, has been awarded a Web3 grant and all for the work that we've done on the Frontier project. But the definition is basically, if you are an Ethereum a developer or user on the left-hand side, you will interact with a substrate-based chain, which in this case is Moonbeam on the right-hand side, without even realizing that you're doing so. So you'll have like a black box in the middle that is doing all the work and all the magic for you, and you'll be interacting basically seamlessly, right? And that's the idea of Frontier. So Frontier, I mean, this is a very high-level definition. There's a lot of things that go into Frontier, and Frontier is implemented into Moonbeam. And I know I talked a lot of like terms, right, and stuff, but I think it's the best way to show you Moonbeam is actually to like use it, right, and show you how you can interact with Moonbeam. So for that, we prepared a very, very short demo just to show you how you can get it started. So what I have here, it's MetaMask that I basically installed it yesterday from the Chrome store. So it's nothing differently. And I have two accounts, Alice and Bob. I'm gonna go to Alice, and you can see here that I'm connected to the Ethereum mainnet. And by the way, this third account, I'll show it to you later on in the demo. So what I have to do now, I can actually connect MetaMask to the Moonbase Alpha testnet. So Moonbase Alpha is a testnet that we have live right now for people to connect to it and play around with Moonbeam Ethereum compatibility features. And you can actually go to the Moonbeam Network website and click on Docs. And this will open actually the documentation website that we have prepared. And here we're trying to get this updated as much as possible, but you can go to Get Started, Testnet, and you can click here to integrate MetaMask to the Moonbase Alpha testnet. And basically, if you scroll down and go through the steps of setting up MetaMask, you will see the information that you need right here. And so basically, to connect MetaMask to Moonbase Alpha, we have to go to the top right corner and then click on Settings, and then on Networks, and then Add Network. All right, so as you can see here on the menu that you see, I have Moonbase Alpha already added. And basically, this is the information that you have in the website to connect to it. This chain ID is actually 43, but after you're connected to it, MetaMask sets it in hex. So when you click Save, you will see that MetaMask is connected now to Moonbase Alpha. And if I go back, you can see that I have already some tokens, and I have been doing some transactions already. So let's stop right here and think about what we just did, right? So we have Alice, which is an account that has a public address and a private key associated, right, to sign transactions. And it was just connected to MetaMask, to Ethereum mainnet with its balance and all. So we're using the same public address and private key, but we're just basically using it in Moonbase Alpha, right? And we can, like a normal MetaMask thing, we can just send a transaction from Alice to Bob from one DEF token. And right now, because this is a testnet, actually the gas price can be set to 0. So there's no worries regarding that. And this will change in the future, of course, but for now you can set the gas price to 0. And once we click Next and Confirm, we actually see now that we have a new pending transaction. And when this goes through, you will see that Bob, which has 0 tokens, will have 1 token. This takes a while. It's a normal blockchain transaction, right? There you go. I got the confirmation on the window that you're not seeing, but now Alice has 1 less token and Bob has 1 dev token. All right, and the other demo I wanted to show you before we continue with the presentation is that you can hop in, for example, to Remix, right? So it's another use, like a tool that is widely used in the Ethereum world, because you have like a compiler and a deployment tool online and you don't need to download anything. And what I have here for you, hopefully you see it fine on the screen, I think you do. It's a very simple contract, right? We're using Solidity 0.7. And you can see that I have a string that I'm going to save on blockchain, and the constructor basically sets the string that is stored. So once the contract is compiled, you can see here on the left-hand side. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to like chime in on the chat, and if I read them, I'll answer them myself. And now if I have my backup Joshy to answer them for you. So once the contract is compiled, I can go to the deploy tabs. And in the environment, I can use the injected Web3 provider that it's provided by MetaMask, right? So you can see here that when I do so, I already have them connected. But if you don't, you're going to have like give access to Remix, so it accesses the MetaMask wallet. So basically, you see that I have Alice here, and I have my Hey TruffleCon contract, and I can put up something here. Hey TruffleCon 2020. I'll deploy the contract. You'll see that I have the regular MetaMask window that it looks very weird because I have my browser on like 200 plus zoom. But if you scroll down, you can just confirm the transaction. And once the contract is deployed, we will see as a normal deployment and Remix, we'll see the instance right here, and we can interact with it. And we see here that I have a string, Hey TruffleCon 2020. So once again, think what we just did, right? We're using these 2 tools that are widely used in the Ethereum development world and basically use them seamlessly on the Moonbase testnet, right? So I think it basically shows you the capability that Moonbeam have on the Polkadot ecosystem. So let's go back to the presentation. All right. So why Truffle, and why do we believe that Truffle plays an important role in Moonbeam network? So basically, to answer that, we also, like I mentioned before, we launched this week the Moonbeam Truffle box. And the idea is that, as we mentioned before, we believe in the multi-chain future. And Truffle has a unique thing, right? That you can actually, let's say that you have your computer and you're working with Truffle and you have it pointed to Ethereum. And if you think about it, if you have it set up the right way, you can just say, hey, I want to deploy my contract to Moonbase Alpha testnet. So you can just, migrate to Moonbase Alpha testnet. But then you can say, hey, I want to deploy it to it. I had made a modification. I want to deploy it to Ethereum, and you can just point it to Ethereum. So that's why we also introduce the Truffle box, and it basically allows developers to quickly get started on Moonbeam with a familiar tool that they know and love, that it's Truffle, right? So you can see the GitHub repo here, and you can find this. Probably Joshy will put it in on the chat for you guys. And in the Moonbeam Truffle box, you have a boilerplate setup. And this boilerplate setup has a Truffle config file, as you would expect, and it's set up for 2 networks. So you have a standalone node, that it's a node that you can run in your local environment. That way, you have basically you don't have to connect to the testnet, and you can control all the parameters in your local environment. The boilerplate setup also includes an ERC20 token contract as an example. So it's a very basic example, but the idea is that you can have a sample contract to play around with. It also has a very basic testing script for the ERC token contract. Once again, this is a super simple testing script that when you run Truffle test, it uses Ganache, so it doesn't use the standalone node. But it's just to show you that you can use your regular old Truffle setup. What is new is that we included the Moonbeam Truffle plugin. And the idea behind the plugin is to actually help you get it started with a standalone node. And we'll explain the Truffle plugin in a couple of slides, okay? So if I show you the Truffle config file, you can see here that this is like, it has like the normal structure that you more or less would expect, right? So we have the networks that we have defined. One is dev, and that is actually for the standalone Moonbeam node. So it's local host on port 9933. But we also have Moonbase Alpha, which is pointing it to the testnet endpoint, HTTPS endpoint. And you can see right here that I have the private key. This private key is specifically for the standalone node. So it's the account that holds all the funds at the time of Genesis, right? So it has all the funds from the Genesis block. And here you have to pass in the private key of your Moonbase Alpha testnet account. And so in order to Truffle uses it to sign the transactions and everything. And you can see down here that we have to find, if I have to stop moving the mouse, and you will see that we have to find the plugin down here, the Moonbeam Truffle plugin. So how can you run a standalone node, right? And the answer to the question, it's on the screen. So it's the Moonbeam Truffle plugin. And this is actually an idea that we were talking with the Truffle team. They said, we have the plugin functionality if you want to use it. And we thought that it was actually quite useful for us to actually provide the developers an easy way to get a standalone node up and running. And the problem is that a standalone Moonbeam node, actually, if you can go to the repo, like our Moonbeam repo, and clone it and install Rust and the dependencies and build a node, it can take from 10 minutes if you have like a super gamer setup, or it can take 40 minutes or so. And then you can run the Moonbeam standalone local node. But with the plugin, we actually offer a way to get started basically in no time. The only requirement is to have Docker installed. So the idea is that you have a Docker image that runs the standalone node, and the image actually is quite clear, right? So you have your own local environment where you can play around with Moonbeam with your tools that you know already, and you have two endpoints available. You have an HTTP endpoint and a WebSocket endpoint. And the plugin offers you the following commands. So you have install, basically that downloads the Docker image. You can run start to start the node, status to check if it's running or not. Pause and unpause kind of makes sense what they mean. But then you have stop, which actually purges a chain. And the difference between pausing the node and stopping it is that pausing, basically, you put the network to like a halt, right? So if you were on block 100 and then you resume it, you will be on block 100 or 101. If you stop it, and it basically removes the container that was running the standalone node, and it actually deletes all the information that was stored on the blockchain. So if you had contracts in there, they will be lost. And then you have the remove command, which basically deletes the Docker image. I brought some examples here. You can see when I run Truffle run, and then you have to pass in the plugin name, which in this case is Moonbeam. Then run start. This starts the local standalone node on this endpoint. Then you can run status to see if the node is running. You can run pause and unpause to pause and unpause it. And then you can run stop to stop the node, and remember that this purges the chain basically. And also, if you want to remove the Docker image, you can run Truffle run Moonbeam remove, and then you'll see that the Docker image is deleted. I think that's everything that I have for you on the presentation side. Don't worry, because we still have a lot of time. So we thought about doing a demo, and in this demo we're gonna touch different tools. So we'll start, of course, with the Moonbeam Truffle box. We'll play around with the plugin, use MetaMask, use Remix, and if we have time, depending on the questions and then on the time itself, we'll go with the Web3 JavaScript library. So the demo structure, more or less, it's that we're gonna start with the Truffle box. I'm gonna show you how you can get started. Also, how to go with the Moonbeam Truffle plugin. We're gonna run some tests on the ERC20 smart contract that it's included. We're going to also deploy that contract to the standalone node and to the Moonbase Alpha testnet and interact with the testnet tokens, right? So I'm going to press escape. And remember that I have MetaMask with Alice. So if you want to get started, you can actually get tokens from the development network, from the testnet, with a faucet that we have prepared on Discord. So once again, if you go to our website, you can click here on faucet, and you can follow these steps onto how to get dev tokens, so you can play around with the testnet. And basically, the idea is that if I open my Discord here, you see that I have the Moonbeam network here in the channel, you can scroll down and go to AlphaNet bot. And I'm not sure if I copied Alice's address. So I have to copy the address. And in Discord, I'll have to say faucet, send, and then this. And you can see that other people have already like requested tokens. So you can actually, this guy yesterday at 6:30 p.m. requested, and it's going to send 10 dApp tokens, and you should get the account balance afterwards, right? So you can see here that Mission Control sent me 10 dApp tokens, and now I have a balance of 16. Of course, this is rounded, right? So if I go to MetaMask, you see that I have 16.81. All right, so to get started with the Truffle box, what you have to do is go to the Truffle Suite site and then click on boxes. And at the bottom of the page, you can see the just released Moonbeam Truffle box. And once you click there, basically there are like two ways to get started. If you have Truffle globally installed, then you can basically run these commands, right? But if you don't worry, because actually Truffle is included as a dependency on the package.json file. So this means that you can just clone the repo, go into the folder, and just continue with the exercise. So basically, I have Truffle globally installed, so I'm going to copy this steps, and I'm going to open my VS Code that I have here in the new terminal. And you can see that I'm going to paste this. So this created the Moonbeam Truffle box folder, and I'm going to run the Truffle unbox command. This will fetch all the files that I need to get started. And there we go. It's that simple. So here we have all these files. Let's get started. I always forget to do this. So now that I remember, I do an npm install. Oh, actually, before I do so, I can actually remove the Truffle, right? Because we don't need it. So I'll do an npm install. And so this is going to install all the dependencies that are needed for the Truffle box. And also it's going to install the Truffle plugin, as you can see here. While that goes on, I'm going to show you the Truffle config file, right? So I showed it to you before, but in here you can see that we have included some messages to prevent people to use have a private key empty and all that. But also I wanted to mention that right now we're using a private provider. And the problem is that if you were to use a HE wallet provider, we noticed that there was an issue that there's a library that it uses as well that does not like our custom chain ID, which is 43. So then in the transaction object, the chain ID is not included. So then the signature is invalid and the transaction is rejected. We're currently working with the Truffle team to try to make sure that we can use HE wallet provider in the future, but we'll see. In the meantime, we've programmed a private provider that if you go into this file, you can see that it uses normal, typical libraries such as a Web3 provider engine and Ethereum.js wallet. And another thing that we're going to do in the Truffle config file is actually, I prepared something a little bit different. Is that I'm going to include my Rinkeby API. So I have an Infura API that points to Rinkeby, and I actually include Rinkeby as a network down here. So after Moonbase, I'll just put it in here. And the next thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to get Alice's private key. I'm going to put it here, right? So I go to MetaMask. You have to go into three dots here, account details, and then export private key and put in your password. Of course, I'm going to show this private key, but understand that private keys give direct access to your funds. So I'm doing this because this is a demo, but it's not something that you should do. I'm going to confirm. I have Alice's private keys. I can put it on the Truffle file here. So now we can actually start, playing around with the contract that it's included. So the contract that is included is mytoken.sol. That you can see here that it's a very simple ERC20 token contract. It's using Solidity version 0.5. We'll work on the next following weeks to update this to the most recent Solidity version. And actually yesterday, Bruno in his presentation, so Bruno is from the Web3 Foundation, and he did a presentation where he used Moonbeam, and he deployed an ERC20 token contract with Solidity 0.7.3. So, and in here, I'm going to put TruffleCon token, and let's say this is TCT. And yeah, so now we have that, and we can run down here Truffle compile. I mean, if we would have run Truffle test, it would compile for us, but we can just run the compile command as well. In here in the migrations folder, we have the typical migration scripts, right? So in number 2, you can see that we're going to deploy the token, and we're passing in the initial, the token total balance of the token, which is 8 million with 18 zeros afterwards. So now down here, I can run Truffle test, and this is going to run this very simple test script. It's going to check the total supply, the balance of the owner. It's going to check also that you can send tokens and you can approve an external spender and then send tokens from there. So you can see here, I mean, like I mentioned before, this is using the testing framework from Truffle that uses Ganache. So this is nothing using the Moonbase, the standalone node, right? So after all of this, let's just go ahead, clear the terminal, and run Truffle migrate -f network Rinkeby. Oops, Rinkeby. So what this is going to do is going to deploy the contract into Rinkeby because we've set up the Impura API and all, right? So I'm going to click enter, and this is going to take a while because it's going to do a dry run and then deploy the contract. So while this is going on, what I prepared for you is that I'm going to go to another terminal, all right? And we're going to go ahead and start the plugin and show you the plugin a little bit. So basically what I can do now is that I can do Truffle run, then this is the plugin name, which is Moonbeam, and then install. And what this is going to do is going to fetch the Docker image that we prepared, and you can see that it's doing the checksums and everything. And then basically you have the tutorial v2.2 Docker image. So let me clear the terminal, and I can do Truffle run Moonbeam start. And you will see that we have a message saying, hey, your node has started on localhost 9933. All right. So, I mean, if you're familiar with Docker, you don't have to use the plugin. You can just like download the Docker image and run it yourself. But we think that this is like these wrapper functions are like a lot easier just to like get started quickly, right? So I think we should be good to go on Rinkeby. Yeah, we're good to go, and we have the contract address. So let's copy this contract address, and let's go to Rinkeby. And let me close Remix because it's going to start like showing all these messages. And basically, what you can see here is that I have Alice on Rinkeby. I have some funds that I got from the faucet. And I can actually add the token by going to add token, custom, edit, and you can see that I have 8 million TruffleCon tokens. All right, so I mean, this deployment worked. So I'm gonna hide this so I don't have a bunch of tokens laying around. And I'm gonna point it to the Moonbase standalone. So this is the local, the node that is running on my local environment that I just started with the plugin. And I told you that I had a third account, and this third account is the one associated to the private key that I showed you before. And you can see that it has all the funds from the Genesis, basically from when the blockchain starts. And this is the account that it's used when you deploy to the development network on Truffle. So now I can clear the terminal, Truffle migrate -f network dev. And because this is in a local environment, it is a standalone node, it's a little bit faster. So you will see that you will have the chain ID 43, it's deploying the migrations. Already have the contract address. On block number 19, as you can see. And now it's deploying the contract itself. And we have the contract address. So just before, I'm gonna go to MetaMask, assets, add token, custom token, and you see that I have my 8 million TruffleCon tokens here. So yeah, I mean, I think let's stop for a second and realize what we just said, right? So we had Truffle configured, and you just deployed a contract to Rinkeby, and then I just decided, hey, I want to deploy it to the standalone Moonbase node, and just ran the same command, just changing a few letters, and deployed it to Moonbeam. And let's go back to the black box definition that I mentioned before, right? So you're not even realizing that this is a parachain that it's built with substrate that is based on Rust. just using your tools, and they're working seamlessly. So I think it's pretty cool, right? So let's hide this tokens once again. And now let's point MetaMask to Moonbase Alpha. And we have Alice. And we're going to deploy the token from Alice, right? So one thing that I have to mention is that if I try to deploy it to the standalone node, let me clear the terminal before I do so. If I try to migrate to the Moonbase Alpha, there will be a problem because currently the standalone node and Moonbase Alpha have the same chain ID. And actually, if you go to the build folder and go to my token, you will see here that basically Truffle stores like the migrations information in this file. And you can see here that I have, this is the deployment on Rinkeby on network 4, where you actually can find the contract address right here. And this is the deployment on chain ID 43, which is the standalone node. So if I would have run this command right here, there will be a conflict because there is no migrations actually, but then there's information about a deployment on chain ID 43. So what we'll do in the near future is that we're going to change the standalone node to a different chain ID, so that way there won't be any conflict. So I explain all that because that's why we have to pass in the reset flag. And you will see that we will be deploying now this contract into Moonbase, right? And I guess you know what we're going to do afterwards. We're going to copy the contract address and check the token on MetaMask just to make sure that it was deployed correctly and nothing happened. So now we have the migrations contract address. And actually on the testnet, we already have almost 300,000 blocks. That's cool. And you can see here that there's a cost of deployment. And this is because you can set up your Truffle config file to use a gas price of 0, because as of now you can use it, but in the near future we'll probably change the gas price to a non-zero value. So and we have the token contract address here. Oh, I'm actually not looking for any questions right now. Oh, okay. Oh, you need some Alex, Joshy. They're not that useful right now. So I can go to MetaMask, and I'm going to add tokens, Goosey token. And now we have 8 million TruffleCon tokens, right? And I mean, you can use MetaMask, right? To for example, let's send some tokens from Alice to Bob. And I'm going to send 100 TruffleCon tokens, gas price of let's put 94, it doesn't matter. And let's put 100,000 of gas limit. And I'll confirm the transaction. And you will see that this transaction will send 100 tokens from Alice to Bob. And to see that, I actually have to add the token to Bob itself as well. Oh, you can see that Bob already has the 100 tokens, and Alice sent 100 tokens. Yeah, I think it's really cool, right? We're using all these tools without even realizing that we're in a substrate-based node or chain. All right, so I think this is the main feature set that I wanted to show you. To show you around the Truffle box, the plugin, and all the functionalities. So now what I'm going to do, actually, let me stop this so we don't have it running. The next exercise I wanted to show you, it's something really cool. It was actually Joshy's idea, and it's we're going to grab another Truffle box, right? And we're going to clone it, unbox it, and deploy it on Moonbase Alpha. And this Truffle box has an interface, like a front end and everything. So I think it's a cool exercise. And in order to do so, we're in the Truffle boxes. We look for the pet shop one. You can see it that it's right here. And basically, you can follow this tutorial to get everything started. So what I did is that I went ahead and copied the commands into a text file. So I'll copy and paste those. But what you need to do is I'm going to copy this command. And basically go back, pet shop, and then go into the pet shop folder and run the Truffle unbox there. Alejandro has an app question. Is it possible to interact with Kusama tokens? Well, I mean, right now, you have to think that dots and Kusama are in different chains, right? So you have the Kusama Moonbeam deployment, and you'll have the Moonbeam deployed on Polkadot. So I mean, in the future, when the Cumulus allows it, you will be able to access dots by connecting with Moonbeam, right? So I mean, right now the Cumulus is under active development on the Rococo network, and basically this feature should be possible in the future when it's available, right? So now we have the pet shop here. You can see that you have the pet shop box unboxed right here, right? So we have to do a couple of changes, right? Because if you, for example, look at the Truffle config file, this is super basic, and we want to deploy it to Moonbase Alpha, right? So what I'll do now, let me close this, and what I'll do now is that I'm going to copy. I have to go one directory up, Moonbeam Truffle box, and then Truffle config file. So I'll copy the Truffle config file from the box that has already like the private key and everything to the pet shop folder. And the other thing I have to copy also is a private provider, right? Because we need that. So we have the private provider and the Truffle config file. And the last thing I'm going to have to modify is that the private provider needs some dependencies. So from the package.json file inside the Moonbeam Truffle box, I'm going to copy these dependencies here, and I'll put them just below directories. I have to add a comma. And for this exercise, we don't need the Moonbeam Truffle plugin, and we don't need the Open Zeppelin contract, right? So after doing all that, I can run npm install. Right, I think we should be good to go. So if you follow the tutorials that are available on the Pet Shop website, we have to create a contract, right? So while we npm install that, let's create a contract that needs to be named adoption.sol. And this is a very simple contract here that I'm going to copy and paste it for you guys. But this is in the website information. You can see here that basically it has an array of 16 of length. Addresses that are called adopters, and we have a function that includes the message.sender of the transaction to that array, and we can get another function to just get the adopters that have adopted a pet, right? So we have the packages already installed. Let me clear the terminal. And now what we have to do is get a migration script, because I mean there is no the contract deployment script here. So I will create a new file. Let me expand this a little bit, and I'm going to name this to deploy adoption.js, right? And in here, I'm going to copy. It's basically the same process that we did for my token. So we need to, import the adoption.sol file, and then just deploy it using this deploy method. And I think with that, we should be good to go to deploy this to Moonbase Alpha. So let me run Truffle migrate -s network Moonbase. So this is going to use Truffle to migrate the contract to Moonbase. And while this goes through, we also have to modify the front end of the application, right? So once again, this is in the tutorial. I'm not going to go through like the details of what everything does. But if we open the source folder on the left-hand side, we're going to open the JavaScript folder and open app.js. And in here, you have everything that you have to modify. It's very clearly stated on the file. So once again, I copied the commands already, so you don't have we don't have to go through them. And I'm going to replace this here. You can see here that this is basically to include the MetaMask as a Web3 provider for the website. For the front end, I have the init contract, which I think creates like a local instance of the contract that it's used then by the application. We have the marked adopt, which basically when a pet is adopted, it will mark that pet as already adopted. So you cannot, nobody can adopt a pet for the second time. And last but not least, we have the handle adopt, which is the function that sends a transaction to adopt a pet. All right, and we have the contract already deployed at this address. So remember this name, this number 17F, right? So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the index.html, And I'm going to modify this just so you can see that, we're doing this right. So adoption center. And down here, I'm going to put, instead of being a pet shop, let's put Joshy's Pet Adoption Center. All right. And we can run then, let me clear the terminal and run npm run dev. See if there's any other questions. Not for now. And basically, this is telling me that the front end is ready on localhost port 3000. So I can actually go ahead to my browser, open the localhost 3000, and we have Joshy's Pet Adoption Center. I think there are like 16 dogs that are looking for adoption. They're kind of similar to the pictures, right? But so yeah, let's go ahead and adopt Fran. He's a boxer, age 3. He's based in Utah. I'll have to figure it out how to get it over the ocean, but that's for another time. So when I click adopt, you can see here that MetaMask pops up, and this is a transaction to the contract 17F. That is the contract that we deployed with Moonbeam, right? And if we scroll down, we confirm the transaction, and we can see that we have the transaction here pending on MetaMask. And once the transaction goes through, then the mark adopted function, you can see here, now nobody can adopt Fran because I already adopted Fran. And we can do so with another pet and so on. But I think this is a really cool example to show that, you can grab any project and just like bring it and deploy it to Moonbase Alpha, to the testnet, right? All right. We have more time for demos. I don't think there's any questions, right? Nope. All right, so the next demo that I'm going to show you, it's how you can use the JavaScript, the Web3 JavaScript library. So we know that it's widely used to interact with websites and everything. Let me clear the terminal and go back. And yeah, thanks. I think so too. I think it's really cool. I know I've mentioned this before, but I think it's really cool that you're using all these tools and you don't even have to think that Rust and Substrate. What is that? It's just basically you're using it as you were like an Ethereum, a regular Ethereum developer. So let's head into the examples folder. Let me close all these tabs. So in the examples folder, I brought 5 examples, and they do different things, right? So the first example that I have here, and I think the only module that I have installed is Web3, well, with the other dependencies. But basically here, we're importing the Web3 library, and we're in the Web3 constructor, we're passing in the endpoint of the Moonbase Alpha testnet. And with that, we have basically all the Web3 methods available for us, right? So what we're doing here is we're going to send a simple transaction from Alice to Bob. So we have Alice's private key. This is Alice's address and Bob's address. And we're using the Web3 method inside ETH accounts. The method is called sign transaction. And basically, you pass in the transaction object and then the private key, and you get a signed transaction, right? So you can see here that we're sending 1 Ether, which if you apply it to our context is 1 dev token. And basically, then we use the send sign transaction method to send it. And I added a couple of console logs here. So run node 01 transaction.js. And you can see here that I'm attempting to make a transaction from this address to this address. And once the transaction goes through, we get the transaction hash. And if we go to MetaMask, well, I'm not actually, I don't remember how much balance. Oh, okay. So Bob had 1 token. So sometimes MetaMask takes a while to refresh oh, there we go. We have now 2 tokens on Bob, and Alice has now 15.7 dev tokens. So yeah, I mean, we're using the Web3 library as in any other case, right? So the second example that I brought is we're going to deploy a contract. So I have this filing contract stuff where I have the bytecode and the API of a very simple incremental contract. I'll show you the contract itself in a little bit, but basically it has a constructor that you have to pass in a number, and that number is stored on the blockchain, and then we can modify it, right? So if we look through the script, it's very similar as before. The only difference is that we're using the Web3 ETH contract method, where we pass in the ABI and we get a local instance of that contract and all its methods, right? So now we can use the deploy method and basically pass in 5 as an argument of the constructor. So the first number that we'll have stored is 5. And then we can use the signed transaction as before, but then in the data field, we're going to pass in the encoded ABI of that transaction object. And just as before, use the same signed transaction. So if I do 02, you will see that I'm deploying from Alice's account. And we have a contract address, as you can see. So now I can actually just, as before, I can open Remix. And in Remix, I have this incrementer contract. So the incrementer contract stores a number, right? And it uses safe math. So we're using a library as well. You can see that we're using the safe math library. And basically, you can increment it with the increment function. And that increment function emits an event. And this is important because we'll use this in a future demo. All right, you can see the event right here on the top. But what I want to do is that I want to make sure that I have Remix on Moonbase Alpha. You can see here. And if I scroll down and I paste the address of the contract and I click this button, I get the contract, basically an interface for the contract right here. And I can check the number and I have 5. Right? I mean, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Sorry. So basically, the next step I'm going to show you is that it's actually a new feature that we added on an upgrade to the testnet that we did in October, and it's subscribing to events, so PubSub. So the first type of subscriptions that I'm going to do is subscribe to pending transactions. So you can see here that I'm using once again the Web3 library, but I'm pointing it to the WebSocket endpoint of the Moonbase Alpha testnet. And basically, we're using the Web3 ETH subscribe method, and the subscription type is pending transactions, and this is just like the callback function to handle the logs. So what I'll do, if I'm lucky, I'm usually not lucky, but if I'm lucky, I'll subscribe to the event, and there will be a transaction on the testnet. I mean, it's a Saturday, so I'm not sure if it's a lot of people on the testnet right now. But what I'll do, just like for the example, is that I'll subscribe and I'll go to MetaMask and send the transaction. Okay, so I'll do node 03. I'll get a subscription ID, so you would see a number there, and then I'll go back and send the transaction. All right, we have it there. Let's see if I'm quick enough. Send, transfer to Bob, 1 dev token. Let's just go with it. I mean, sometimes the WebSocket connection, oh, I got 2, yeah, okay, so these are repeated, but you can see that I have one transaction hash. Oh, sometimes I did this test and I got no transaction hashes, and now I get like 3. I'm lucky. All right, so you can see that you can get the transaction hash of each of the transactions that are pending. So let's clear this. And then now let's subscribe to the block headers. Now we're gonna get block information, and we can subscribe to that as well. It's the same example as before, but you can see now that I'm changing the subscription type. I can run node subscription to block headers. This is a subscription ID. And I will get, I'm going to stop it right here because then it'll fill up really quickly. And let me expand this a little bit. And you can see that I have some of the information of the block. Of course, and Bruno mentioned this yesterday, and I think it's a super valid point, is that proof of work chains, it's different than Moonbeam. Basically, you're getting a proof of stake network. So there are things that are not included in the block headers, such as like the block miner, right? Because we're actually emulating Ethereum blocks. So I mean, block miner in this sense doesn't make much sense. And actually, Bruno mentioned the point yesterday. It's important that your contract should be able, or your code should be able to work seamlessly on Moonbeam, unless it relies on the proof of work method, right? So yeah, the Joshy is right. So it means people are making transfer of the public testnet right now, which I think it's cool because it's Saturday 5 o'clock, so people are playing around with it. That's cool. We have also like the timestamp. We have actually one fun thing is that there's no difficulty, right? Because it's not a proof of work network. For this specific block, there was no gas used, so no. And yeah, we have some other information here. For the last example, yeah, I do have time. For the last example, basically what I wanted to show you, I think it's one of the coolest things about PubSub, right? Is that you can subscribe to events from contracts. So remember the incrementer contract that I showed you before. Actually, I have to fetch the address of the incrementer contract. I have it right here and remix. So let me paste this here. So what we're using now is the log subscription type. And for that, you have to pass in the address of the contract that you want to subscribe to the events emitted by that contract, right? And you can actually also pass in the topics where you can include the event signature to tell the subscription that I just want to subscribe to this event. So only when this event is emitted, you let me know. Because let's say a contract has 40 events, right? And you don't want to get all of them, you just want to get one. For example, in the Truffle and the ERC20 smart contract, there's a lot of events, but let's say you want to subscribe only to the transfer event. And you can do so by filtering with topics. And in this case, let's say, our contract only has one event, but let's say we want to subscribe to that specific event only, which doesn't make much sense. But you can actually, to get the event signature, if this is the event you want to subscribe to, you have to calculate the catch after 56 of the event name and the types. So in this case, you have to put UN256, and this gives you a hash, and you have to pass in that hash as a topic. All right. So now what I'll do is that I'm going to subscribe to the events. I'm going to go back to Remix. I'm going to increment the number that we had stored, right? And you will see that an event will be emitted, and we can actually see it on Remix, but we'll also get that information here in the console log. So let me go and subscribe. We have the subscription ID. So I'm in Remix already, and we have the number that is 5, and let's put 5 more. Increment. We have MetaMask. Let's scroll down and confirm. And the transaction is pending. And once this is confirmed, we're going to check that the log is actually cached by Remix here. If we expand this, I'll zoom in just in case you don't see it. But you have down here logs, and you can see that we have from topic. So this is the event signature, and we have on argument 010. So 10 is the actual value that we have stored right now. And in argument 1, we have the value that was incremented by, right? So if we go back to the console log, oh, okay. So this message means that I got, connection got dropped. But at the top, you can see that I got the event emitted by the contract. And you can see here that basically I have the topics. The first field right here is the event signature. So this is telling me that that's an event emitted by that event. Let's say it like that, right? And the second field right here, it's basically the hex representation of 10, which is lower caps A. And this is because this field right here, which is a number that it's stored, it's indexed. So it's returned as a topic. This value right here, which is 5, is returned as a data. And you can see it right here that it's 5. So, what we did right now is use the PubSub capabilities to subscribe to an event that was emitted by a smart contract deployed on Moonbeam Alpha, which is a substrate-based blockchain. But if you think about it, these are just like things you can do on an Ethereum mainnet right now, right? So yeah, I think I timed it quite good. Let's go back to the presentation because I think we're done. So basically, thank you for your attention. I'm really happy. We're really happy to be part of the TruffleCon and be a sponsor as well. You can get in touch with us through our website, which is moonbeam.network. Feel free to join our Discord channel. I'm always there answering questions. Actually, the whole team is always answering questions in the Discord channel. We're happy. We're a very welcoming community. You can actually go to our Docs website as well. A lot of these tutorials that I mentioned to you today, they're included on the website. So feel free to go through them and ask any questions. There are a link to the 2 GitHub repos that we work the most, so Moonbeam and Frontier. And we actually have news there. We're hiring. So feel free to apply to any job positions. We actually have 2 open positions. So yeah, feel free to do so. And thanks a lot for your attention. And if you have any questions, I think we have 5 minutes for any questions that you guys might have. But if not, yeah, thanks a lot for the opportunity, and I'll see you around in the Discord.